Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is one that reaches straight into the heart, especially because it unfolds on the most emotional night of the year, Christmas. But instead of lights, laughter, and family gatherings, this Christmas begins in silence and ends in a moment that none of them will ever forget. So settle in, because this is the remarkable story of what happened when a former Navy SEAL knocked on the door of a lonely widow and her 2 children on Christmas night, and simply said, "Come with me." The night was cold enough to make your breath turn white the moment you stepped outside. Snow drifted down the street in slow, soft sheets, settling on rooftops and collecting on windowsills. It was Christmas Eve, the kind of night that should have been filled with songs, the smell of warm food, and the sound of kids tearing open presents. But inside a small, dim house at the end of Evergreen Lane, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. The lights were turned off to save electricity. The heater barely pushed enough warmth to keep the frost from forming inside the windows. And in the quietness sat a woman named Leah, a widow, just 34 years old, with 2 children, an 8-year-old, Jonah, and 60-year-old, Emma, curled up beside her under a single shared blanket. It had been 2 years since Leah lost her husband, Daniel, a firefighter who died while saving 2 children from a burning house. Christmas had never felt the same since. There were no gifts under the tree this year, mostly because there was no tree. She had sold almost everything over the past year just to keep afloat. Rent, groceries, school supplies. Life had become one long stretch of survival. The one thing she refused to sell, though, was the last gift her husband gave her, a small wooden star he carved by hand and wrote on the back, "For our brightest future." It was cracked now, from being dropped during a moment of grief, but she still kept it with her wherever she went. That night, the children had fallen asleep on her shoulders, hungry but exhausted, untouched by the excitement the rest of the world was experiencing. Outside, houses on the street were glittering with colorful lights, playing Christmas music loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. But inside Leah's home, the only sound was the ticking clock and the occasional shivering breath. Across the town, meanwhile, walking through the snow with purposeful steps, was a man named Cole Harrison, a retired Navy SEAL who had returned from service only months earlier. Cole was tough in appearance but carried a quiet sorrow behind his eyes. He had lost teammates, lost years, lost pieces of himself he wasn't sure he'd ever get back. He had come home to a world that looked familiar but didn't feel familiar. The holidays were the hardest because the memories of lost brothers in arms hit the strongest then. Cole was spending Christmas volunteering for a local charity, delivering warm meals and gift baskets. He didn't have much family, and helping others made him feel grounded. Tonight, he had 3 more addresses left on his list, including one at the end of Evergreen Lane. He carried a large bag of supplies over his shoulder: food, blankets, toys, and a few gift cards. But what he didn't know yet was that this final house would change his entire night. That as he approached the small, dark house at the end of the lane, he noticed something immediately. No lights, no decorations, no signs of warmth or celebration. The windows were dim, and the porch light wasn't even on. The only thing on the front door was a faded wreath that looked like it had been used for several years. Cole paused, feeling that familiar tug of intuition. Something wasn't right. He knocked on the door. Inside, Leah jolted. It was nearly midnight. Who would possibly be visiting now? She gently shook her children awake and whispered for them to stay behind her. With cautious steps, she approached the door, her heart thumping because unexpected knocks usually meant bad news, or worse, landlords, debt collectors, trouble. She unlocked the chain slowly and opened the door just an inch. Standing there, snow dusted across his shoulders, was a tall man with a calm but serious face, holding a large thermal bag and a wrapped box. "Evening," Cole said gently. "I'm with the Holiday Outreach Program. I'm delivering supplies, and I wanted to make sure everything's okay. It looks pretty dark in there." Leah's voice trembled. "We're fine. Really, we're fine." But Cole had heard that tone many times over CS people who weren't fine at all but didn't want to be a burden. He didn't push, though. He simply asked, "May I give these to you? It's food, and some things for the kids." Leah hesitated, embarrassed. Taking charity always made her feel like she was failing her husband's memory. But then she felt 2 small hands gripping her leg. Jonah and Emma had peeked out from behind her. Their eyes immediately locked onto the containers of food. She nodded silently. Cole handed her the first bag, then the second. When his hand brushed hers, he noticed how cold she was. Her fingers felt almost numb. Something twisted painfully in his chest. What kind of Christmas was this for them? He cleared his throat. "If it's okay, may I check your heater? It's freezing in there." Again, Leah hesitated, but this time, shame turned into exhaustion, and she stepped aside. "It barely works," she admitted. "They scheduled a repair, but they pushed it to next week." Cole stepped in, closing the door behind him to keep out the cold. The house was nearly silent, and the air inside was so cold that he could see his breath. The kids stood close together, staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and hope. He knelt down slightly to meet their eyes. "Hi there, I'm Cole." "I'm Jonah," the boy said shyly. "And this is my sister. We didn't think Santa was coming this year, Cole smiled gently. Well, sometimes Santa sends helpers. You never know. Leah had opened the food containers by then, and the smell alone made the kids' stomachs rumble. Cole checked. The heater it was old, rusted, and barely functioning. He sighed. No fixing this tonight. When he turned around, he saw something that broke him a little inside. Leah silently wiping tears from her eyes as her kids devoured warm food like they hadn't eaten properly in days. That's when he realized something. Leaving them like this wasn't an option. Not tonight. Not on Christmas. He zipped up his jacket, took a deep breath, and then spoke. Leah, kids, grab your coats. Come with me. Leah froze. What? No, we can't just go with a stranger. That's fair, Cole said calmly, but I promise you're safe with me, and I'm not taking you anywhere dangerous. I volunteer at a community center that hosts Christmas night events. There's warmth, food, presents, people. No one should be alone on a night like this. Leah looked at her children. Their eyes were pleading, sparkling for the first time in months. Still, she didn't move. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Cole said, voice firm but kind. Let me do this. I've seen enough darkness in the world. I want tonight to be different for all of us. Slowly, Leah nodded. Within minutes, they were bundled up with whatever jackets they had, and Cole led them outside into the snowy night. He helped them into his truck, turning on the heat full blast. Emma giggled because her fingers hurt as they warmed up, and Jonah stretched his hands toward the vents like he had just discovered magic. Leah sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window as they drove. After a long silence, she finally said, "Why did you come here tonight?" Cole thought for a moment before answering. Because someone once helped me when I was at my lowest, and I promised myself, if I ever had the chance to do the same for someone else, I wouldn't miss it. She looked at him then, not just a glance, but a deep, searching look as if trying to understand what pain he carried beneath that calm exterior. And for a moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safety. When they arrived at the community center, warmth flooded out the open doors. The sound of laughter, music, and clinking dishes filled the air. Children ran around playing games, volunteers served food, and a massive Christmas tree glowed at the center of the hall. Emma gasped. Jonah's mouth fell open. Leah covered her lips with her hand. Overwhelmed, Cole led them inside, introducing them to volunteers who immediately welcomed the kids with small wrapped presents and warm cocoa. The children blended into the festivity instantly, laughing and playing like they had shed months of heaviness in just minutes. Leah stood near the doorway, watching her children with a soft smile forming on her lips. One Cole noticed from the other side of the room. He approached her slowly, carrying 2 cups of cocoa. He handed her one. You did good, he said quietly. She shook her head. No, you did. I've been trying to keep everything together, but I feel like I've been failing them. Cole leaned against the wall beside her. You've kept them warm, safe, and loved. That's not failure. That's strength. She closed her eyes as tears slipped down her cheeks. Not of sadness this time, but of relief. The night grew warmer, fuller, brighter. Leah and her children ate until their stomachs were full, played games, opened presents, and shared laughter with others. For the first time in years, they felt like Christmas had found its way back to them. As the event wound down and the children grew sleepy, volunteers offered them a temporary room in the community shelter. Warm beds, clean sheets, even a small tree decorated in the corner. Leah hesitated. I don't want to take someone else's space. Cole shook his head. This space is here for exactly this reason. She nodded, exhausted but grateful. As she tucked her kids into bed, she whispered, I think Daddy would be proud of us tonight. Later, as Leah stepped out into the hallway, she found Cole sitting on a bench, hands clasped, staring at the floor as if lost in a memory. She sat beside him. You okay? He nodded slowly. Yeah, just thinking. This is the first Christmas since I came home that didn't feel empty. Leah reached out and touched his arm gently. Thank you. Truly, you didn't have to help us, but you did. He looked at her then, really looked, and felt something soften inside him. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Connection. Sometimes, he said quietly, helping someone else is how you heal yourself. The next morning, when the kids woke up to a small pile of presents and warm breakfast waiting for them, their laughter echoed through the halls. And for the first time in years, Leah felt hopeful, not just surviving, but really living. Cole showed up again that morning, smiling as he carried a few more things, coats that actually fit the kids, shoes, and even a small wooden star ornament. This reminded me of something, he said. Thought you might like it. Leah turned the star over and gasped. On the back were the words, a new beginning. Her hands trembled. She hugged him tight, grateful, emotional. Thank you, she whispered. No, he whispered back. Thank you for coming with me. And that was the night a widow, her children, and a lonely ex-Navy SEAL discovered something extraordinary. That sometimes the greatest gift isn't under a tree. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a knock at the door, a warm hand reaching out, and for simple words, come with me.